Hello, community, and welcome to another Keeping It Real with Dr. Anita podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Anita Polite-Wilson, a C-Suite trusted advisor and board director, helping C-Suite leaders and their teams reframe diversity conversations from difficult to different. It's April 1st, commonly known as April Fool's Day. According to a March 6, 2023 article in Reader's Digest, there's no question that April Fool's Day is one of the most widely recognized non-religious holidays in the Western world. Children prank parents, co-workers prank co-workers, and yes, national news outlets still prank their readers. But why? What is the origin of April Fool's Day, and how did it become an international phenomenon? The article goes on to reveal that the totally legit, not pulling your leg answer to the origin of April Fool's Day is nobody really knows. I did complete my April Fool's Day due diligence with a Google search, and I didn't find any concrete information about its origins. So why am I even mentioning this? Because today I'm excited to announce the official launch of my newly redesigned website. Now don't look now, but at the end of this podcast, please do check out my website at dranita.com. You do still have to spell out the word doctor, and download my newest ebook entitled Leading Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Work. What's your why not? With this one step, you'll also set yourself up to receive my new quarterly newsletter, which will launch on April 15th. Now, just to be clear, these announcements are not April Fool's pranks. It's the first day of a new month and my first opportunity to tell you about what's next in the life of Dr. Anita Enterprises Incorporated. So please join me. Speaking of what's next, I'm continuing to delve more deeply into the subject of leading diversity, inclusion, and belonging work, and what's your why not? It's been said that to do the same thing and expect different results is pretty foolish. And yet, when it comes to diversity, inclusion, and belonging work, too often organizations are doing the same things that fail to have a lasting impact and wonder why the results they seek aren't achieved, or if they are achieved, why those results aren't sustainable. It requires us to ponder and grapple with the overarching question being, what's our organizational why not? This invites us to ask other questions that impact the authenticity and sustainability of diversity, inclusion, and belonging work. Questions like, who isn't leading authentically? What aren't we willing to address? When are we failing to call out limiting belief systems? Where are we looking the other way when bias leads to injustice? Why aren't we doing the real work as individuals who may also happen to lead others? How do we make a noticeable difference every day in small ways that have huge impacts? One of the things I love about being a consultant is constantly learning with other consultants. Recently, I had the pleasure of engaging in a virtual space that was intimate and inspiring. Neil Priddy and Jason Eisner of Aristotle Performance have created an amazing certification program, which I completed 2 years ago, based on a best-selling book by Dr. Amy Edmondson entitled The Fearless Organization. Neil and Jason have created the Fearless Leader Toolkit that is helping to transform the workplace as we know it. As a consultant cohort, we explore the conditions under which people are most likely to change if they've been heard enough, inspired enough, given enough, or learned enough. Which of these conditions resonates with you? And how can you identify opportunities in your organization to support others through change as a result of leading diversity, inclusion, and belonging work based on addressing your organizational why not? An important thing to note, people are less likely to get on board with change they feel is being done to them and more likely to get on board with change that they are part of initiating. And that attitude begins with awareness. We're going to go into a deep dive into this topic when my guest, Ms. Pat Waters, Chief People Officer at UKG, joins me for this month's Real Conversation from the C-Suite. If you didn't already know, UKG stands for United, Kind, and Growing. They are in the business of HR payroll and workforce management, and their purpose is people. I love that. In my work, I do my best to align people, passion, and purpose. So Pat is definitely the guest for us. On top of her responsibilities as the Chief People Officer for UKG, Pat is also a board member and a LinkedIn instructor, so many of you may already know who she is. In our first conversation with Ms. Waters, she's going to share a little bit about her work at UKG and the phenomenal culture that is thriving there as a result of inclusive design. She has a personal story about her passion for belonging in the workplace that was ignited years ago as a young ball player. I can't wait for you to hear all about it. In our second conversation with Pat, I'll invite her to share her thoughts about diversity washing, diversity fatigue, and the challenge of balancing culture and belonging. Now, I can tell you that for Pat, it comes down to leaders who are purpose-driven and practice servant leadership. There's so much more that she'll have to share with us about that. Finally, in our last conversation with Pat Waters, I'll ask her to share her thoughts about how individual strengths not only accelerate organizational performance, but how strengths can also promote belonging in the workplace. If you'd like to listen to this podcast again to help prepare yourself for our real conversation from the C-suite with Ms. Pat Waters, please go to my website at dranita.com and click the Keeping It Real podcast link in the top center of the homepage. Please follow, like, send me some feedback, and share with your network any broadcast that helps you reframe diversity conversations from difficult to different. Until next time, this is Dr. Nita reminding you to stay blessed and keep it real. Oh, I almost forgot. Please remember to visit my redesigned website to check out the changes and download my complimentary ebook entitled Leading Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Work. What's your why not? And receiving your copy automatically enrolls you to receive my first quarterly newsletter when it launches on April 15th. And I promise that reading my newsletter will be much more enjoyable than filing your taxes. Join me on the journey of belonging to experience what's next when you decide to partner with me as your C-suite trusted advisor in reframing diversity conversations from difficult to different.